The original 1999 Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver by Crystal Dynamics has become a quintessential cult classic that inspired me and so many others to become invested into the Legacy of Kain franchise. Even after all these years, I still consider it one of the most memorable gaming experiences. It was so different from other PS1 games in its captivating world and powerful writing. I'd long assumed this was my favourite in the series and an all-time classic, but now in retrospect, it's mixed. Soul Reaver is a decent action-adventure game conjoined with a gripping narrative that keeps you playing beyond its simplicity and datedness. It's clear the developmental woes at play Crystal Dynamics led to a short, direct game of great writing and unimplemented features rather than a true masterpiece. The opening is a genuine masterpiece, however. Set centuries after the bad ending of Blood Omen, Kain has built his vast, malevolent empire across Nosgoth. Humanity is merely a footnote, and the world-sustaining pillars lie in ruins. Kain created numerous offspring that would carry on his dynasty and spread vampirism, one of his acolytes being Raziel, who develops wings, evolving well beyond his master. In response, Kain brutally mutilates his body and tosses him into the Lake of the Dead. Because water doesn't mix well with vampires, it's a pretty brutal death. However, the Elder God, a Lovecraftian omniscient being, resurrects Raziel as an undead wraith, bestowing him the title the Reaver of Souls. In the millennia that has passed, Kain's empire has collapsed, along with the world, stopping the wheel of fate from turning. The process of death and rebirth cannot occur as vampires can live forever, even as mere ghouls, thus trapping the souls contained. Raziel is tasked to hunt down and destroy Kain and his former brethren in order to restore the world and satisfy his vengeance. Honestly, Soul Reaver has a pretty straightforward plot. Major twists do occur, but are unexplained. Rather, the sequels do all of that, but that leaves many unanswered questions and a frustrating cliffhanger. What's special is how the story is presented and delivered. Simon Templeman returns to reprise his role as Kain and quickly becomes one of the best villains ever, not just in video games, with his cold, cruel, yet almost pragmatic beliefs and attitude. Raziel is voiced by Michael Bell, who delivers a fantastic performance, embittered at the world but still determined and invested into his goal of revenge. Like in Blood Omen, Raziel will make various anecdotes on the environment and some of the background lore. Bell's authentic delivery always makes it a pleasure, even with the simple modelling.
Its architects conceived this tower as a holy weapon against the vampire menace, a colossal instrument of brass and stone. The cathedral's pipes, once tuned to blast a deadly hymn, now stood silent, and these vacant spaces whistled their impotence.
However, if you've played the original Blood Omen, the tone and style of Soul Reaver is very different. They share similar gothical architectural design in the levels and have a strong foreboding metallic soundtrack, but there are various biblical and religious allusions and themes in how Raziel is portrayed, like being cast down before returning with angelic-like wings. This is because the original concept of Soul Reaver was more religiously based. The setting is very post-apocalyptic, with an overwrought feel to the broken machinery, lack of any life or society, and a general degradation and collapse of the world. The electronic, sharp, and industrial soundtrack by Kurt Harland only reinforces this hopeless tone. The world is truly beyond saving. Early into the game, Raziel encounters Kain, wielding the titular Soul Reaver. After a one-sided fight, which Kain quickly wins, he shatters the blade over Raziel, releasing its essence. This power attaches itself to Raziel, turning the ghostly blade into his de facto primary weapon, a la Master Sword. The rest of Soul Reaver plays out like other Zelda Metroid-esque games. You traverse Nosgoth to explore a dungeon, solving puzzles and fighting enemies before defeating one of your brothers and obtaining a new power, allowing you to access the next dungeon, and so on. These new powers include wall climbing, phasing through gates, and swimming. It's all pretty stock stuff, and are fairly limited. Only certain walls can be scaled, and there's not much water anyway. Some later powers are pretty useless aside from opening a few doors. The big mechanical twist for Soul Reaver is the addition of the Spectral Realm. Because Raziel is already dead, at any point he can enter an undead netherworld filled with vengeful spirits. Whilst in this world, water is totally harmless and material objects cannot be interacted with, making doors impassable. But it also distorts the environment, allowing you to traverse different areas with greater ease. It's a really cool idea, seeing platforms warp out along with the ghostly atmosphere of the Spectral Realm, making it really entertaining to explore. It's also very restricted. Only specific parts of the game are affected, and it soon becomes formulaic puzzle solving and platforming. For the time, it was very technically impressive. There were few games that could alter the environments in such an instantaneous way. This continues into how the world is structured. There are no loading screens or transitions that break up areas like in Zelda. You're constantly moving forward unhampered by any interruptions. This is still very effective in maintaining the flow of the game. It's almost like an early sandbox or open progression system. This is still very effective in maintaining the flow of the game. It's almost like an early sandbox or open progression system. This does come at a cost of the environmental details, which are very basic. Often it's very sparse rooms with the same dark, ash-grey textures, which make levels a bit repetitive. Considering that by 1999, games like Tomb Raider, Medieval, and Mega Man Legends really try to flesh out their stages to be visually appealing, Soul Reaver is a lot more primitive. The health system is quite interesting and advanced. If you lose all your health, you enter the Spectral Realm. Lose all your health there and you respawn by the Elder God. You're already dead, so you technically can't lose. When enemies are killed, they release souls that Raziel can consume, restoring his vitality. It's a really cool, flexible health system, eliminating the mainstay of health pickups cluttering the levels. The actual gameplay of Soul Reaver is that of typical late 90s adventure games. You platform, fight some enemies, and solve puzzles. Raziel is fairly responsive, but is noticeably clunky when jumping. The ability to glide with his wings make things a bit more forgivable, kinda like in Spyro. The camera can get stuck on the environment, luckily you can manually adjust it. Disappointingly, instead of capitalizing on the spectral mode and different abilities, a lot of the puzzles are block-based and are very simple. You grab them, match them up to the corresponding pattern, then you're done. A weighty chunk of your time is spent doing this, moving perfectly made cubes before something activates. There are some neat puzzles that use your aforementioned abilities to good effect, and mechanical based ones, but there are just not enough of them. Initially, combat is okay, but soon becomes borderline broken and pathetically easy. Raziel's Soul Reaver, while powerful, is only available while at full health, otherwise you'll need to rely on using your claws, spears, and torches to kill your foes. Vampires are immortal, so you can only be stunned. To finish them off, you need to burn or impale them, which is brutal as hell. The Soul Reaver itself can outright obliterate weakened enemies, which is very satisfying. You'll also encounter human opponents, however these guys can be avoided entirely if you spare this one due to the beginning of the game. Yep, obviously they can kind of suck compared to an undead vampire lord, so fights are brief albeit cathartic. The issues of combat stem from it being too simple. By the halfway mark of the game, you'll unlock an ability that allows you to knock enemies back, lightly injuring them, except this can be done an unlimited number of times, so you'll spam this attack again and again, then walk up to them and destroy them with the Soul Reaver. It works all the time, without fail. The additional options in combat, moving around, using different weapons, is rendered totally pointless. Even then, half the time you can just run right past them. A very apparent sign of the game's uneven development is by having numerous glyphs scattered across the game. These are essentially your magical attacks and are often held within smaller dungeons. These places are very well detailed with voice acting and unique enemies and amount to about a third of the entire game, and you can totally ignore them. The glyphs, while cool in concept, have no real purpose. Combat is made too easy already for the Soul Reaver and is also too infrequent to warrant actually using the spells. While I did collect them, I barely used them, if only just for some footage. A huge waste, but originally the game was meant to be much more expansive, so perhaps the implementation was more warranted. There's also health and spirit upgrades, but they're unnecessary as you frequently enter the Spectral Realm anyway, resetting your health, so an extended health bar makes little difference. Please don't think I hate the game, I adored it when I was younger, but now I'm more aware of its faults. What you have in Soul Reaver is a straight 8 to 9 hour long game with great atmosphere without much fleshed out content. Soul Reaver is still an engrossing Shakespearean epic of betrayal and bloodlust with excellent acting, character and aesthetic that's rarely far from my mind. It deserves its cult classic status despite its flaws and hang-ups. I remember my first time trekking through the wastes of Nosgoth, attentively listening to Raziel's frequent monologues, and that very raw feeling it gave me as good and evil dissipated in the face of the apocalypse. It's these long-lasting moments and memories that allow me to confidently recommend Soul Reaver to anyone wanting a powerful, memorable story and a gateway into the superb Legacy of Kain franchise that I still heartily recommend.